Go. We're on the air. Okay. Hi, everybody, and welcome. Everybody say a quick Bismillah. Good luck. Hope the technology works for everybody out there. Welcome to the first online workshop organized and sponsored by the National Middle East Language Resource Center. We are broadcasting from Emory University. Our topic today is building reading fluency. What we do when we're talking about reading in the classroom. I will be referring to a number of texts which we have put in PDF form on the web. These are available for you to open up and or print out from the website, the NMELRC website. Most of them have an Arabic and an English script version, and you'll see what we'll do with them when we get to them. Also, we have I have a help here in fielding email questions. You may send questions and comments to albatal@learnlink.emory.edu, and we'll get to these when we can. Okay, well, first of all, I want to say a word about what my goals for today are, and these are my main goal is for us to think about four things when we think about teaching reading. The first is what we do in terms of in-class reading activities and what we do outside of class in terms of reading activities, and how these activities differ, how they can and should differ, how we can best efficiently use class time for things that need to be done in class and have students work outside of class on certain kinds of activities. Second thing I want us to be thinking about is how we can help students acquire skills and strategies for efficient comprehension. And what do we mean by efficient comprehension? We'll be talking about that all the way through this afternoon. The third thing I want us to be thinking about is how to balance fluency and accuracy. Now, we think about fluency and accuracy and balancing the two of them when we think about teaching speaking skills, but I think these apply to reading skills as well, and they apply at all levels. That is, we don't need to wait until one particular level to start building on accuracy, nor do I think we want to wait until an upper level to work on fluency of reading. So although they vary, we always ought to be thinking about how to achieve balance and how to be working on both fluency and accuracy in reading skills. And the fourth thing that I want us to think about is how to make reading fun. That is, how to turn reading exercises and activities, and particularly the ones we do in class, into journeys of discovery that are exciting for the students, that are not drudgery, that are not, this awful open the dictionary and look up a whole list of words kind of a thing, but that the text itself kind of turns into an exploration, and that the students are constantly rewarded from what they themselves can discover in the text. And so I, as an instructor, am there to kind of cheer them on and coach them, but I'm not there to spoon feed them, and so I want to avoid that. I want to avoid things like answering questions like, what does this word mean, what does this word mean, and turning into a dictionary, a walking, breathing dictionary. So with those things in mind, let me then turn to and say a word about what we mean when we talk about reading fluency or fluent reading. And I'll start that by saying what I do not mean, and what I do not mean is reading aloud. Reading aloud is an excellent pronunciation exercise. If I have a luxury of a 5-hour-a-day in-class intensive program, like some of the summer programs, or outside academe, then I might think about sort of spending some class time reading aloud. I benefited from reading aloud one-on-one when I was a very advanced student in CASA in Cairo. But I don't think that we have the luxury of affording class time spent on reading aloud in our classrooms, where we're meeting an average of 4 hours a week only and teaching our difficult or challenging languages. Reading aloud is the opposite of reading comprehension, in the sense that if you think that if a student is concentrating on how to produce that word and produce that language, the student can't also be thinking at the same time about the meaning. I mean, it's very, very difficult to do, even in one's native language, to really read aloud well and also be following what the text means at the same time. What we also want to avoid is falling into the trap of having the students understand every single word. And students will naturally want to do this, some more than others, those who tend to be text-focused or, sort of focused on especially medieval and classical things. But even these students need to learn that it's not efficient to read every text the same way, and not all texts are created equal. In any given text, not every word is created equal. There are some things that are more important than others, and so we need to help them figure out that, there are certain things that I want to let go for efficiency's sake. There's certain how to focus and how to find those important things in a text is really crucial. What I mean by fluent reading is developing in the students and the learners their own ability to assess appropriate goals and strategies for each text. That is, we set those as a teacher, but we also want to be thinking to the day when they'll be independent readers, and so we want to have them also kind of develop the sense of, okay, here's a text, here's a newspaper article, here's a poem, here's an encyclopedia entry, here's a volume of, prophetic hadiths. What am I going to do with this text? What are my goals? How can I approach it? What are good strategies to use to help me get the most out of it? Also, we mean by fluent reading what is called in the literature interactive reading. And interactive here doesn't mean interaction between students or even between student and instructor. Interaction means the interaction of different kinds of background knowledge, world background knowledge and general information on the one hand, and language knowledge, grammatical knowledge, and so forth, vocabulary on the other hand. That is, these two kinds of knowledge interact with each other, and the student needs to kind of be able to go back and forth and eventually synthesize so that he or she can bring both of these kinds of knowledge to bear, to squeeze as much as he or she possibly can out of the meaning of a text before turning to the dictionary. Turning to the dictionary and reading with the dictionary, the reason why we work so hard at developing these skills is in part for me because of my own experience as a learner of Arabic. And I still remember very well being in a fourth-year Arabic class, being in advanced Arabic, and being suddenly thrown into the world of reading outside a textbook for the very first time. And of course, we were thrown into literature. And we dutifully opened up our stories and started with the first word, didn't recognize it, looked it up in the dictionary. Second word, looked it up in the dictionary. Third word, looked it up in the dictionary. And we would go to class the next day with translations that were something like, the zebra fell into the toilet off of the refrigerator, and just things that just didn't mean anything at all because we couldn't see the forest for the trees, literally. And so that's what we want to really help our students do. We want to help them start with the forest, define the forest. Is it a cedar forest? Is it a orchard? Is it, are they apple trees? What are they? And then sort of start to look at the individual trees. We want to help the students learn to process in chunks, and this is something we're going to be looking at when we turn to look at our texts. We want to avoid linear processing. It's first word, second word, third word, fourth word. Our languages are not subject, verb, object languages for the most part. Our word orders are different. They're varied. Word order is very important, and students can't possibly understand a sentence which the subject follows the verb unless they're programmed to look for it and programmed to process things in chunks and anticipate. And maybe if I had Carly Simon here, I would play her song, Anticipation. To develop the sense of anticipation in our students. Anticipation is really half of fluent reading, whether it's semantically anticipating or grammatically anticipating what might come. What do I expect to find in this text, in this sentence, after this verb, at all these different levels. Okay. So enough talking. Let's turn to some of the text. First, I'd like to turn to what is on your computers, Table 1. Table 1 is kind of a work in progress that I have here. And let's see if we can get it on screen. It talks about, sort of takes a look at reading at different levels. Okay, I'll have to show you this a little bit at a time. There we go. Okay, I hope that's clear. So at the elementary level, what are the different levels? So sort of elementary and especially lower elementary and intermediate. And of course, we all know from proficiency that intermediate is a huge level in itself. It takes a long time. And then we'll get to advanced. What kinds of texts and what are just some of the skills and strategies that we can be working on at these different levels. Again, this is very much work in progress. This is draft. This is not an exhaustive list. This is meant to get us thinking about these different topics and really get us experimenting with things. So it's meant to kind of prod you to think, not sort of don't take this as any kind of definitive work here, please. Notice that we have, at the very elementary level, I think, two different kinds of texts. We have composed texts, is the kind that we find, foreigner talk. David meets Johnny, and they go to a cafe, or they talk about their family, or whatever. These are very pedagogical. What we're doing is reinforcing, primarily. We're recognizing, we're building fluency with accuracy, and we expect a degree of accuracy here. On the other hand, from the very beginning, we want to start with authentic texts, right? We want to start with familiar genres and clear context. And often these texts at the very beginning, as you'll see in a minute, will involve not so much chunks of language and prose, but maybe lists, advertisements, things that don't, that are easy, that the very form of which and the shape of which will help students kind of guess what they are, because they're familiar with genres, right? Everybody knows the genre of an encyclopedia article, or the genre of an advertisement, or the genre of a, some kind of a shopping list or something like that. And so let's use that, we can use that familiarity to help build reading skills. Scanning, what am I after? Part of what I'm after in scanning here is just letting them get used to our languages on a page, especially those Hebrew, Persian, Arabic who have other scripts, right? I mean, they just need a certain amount of letting their eye get comfortable on the page. So that's really part of what we're doing. When they see an unfamiliar word, do I want them to be able to what do they know? What can I expect? They can determine noun, adjective, verb. What kind of a word is it, right? And I want them to begin guessing meaning from context. This is a skill that we'll be working on sort of all the way through. Moving on to the intermediate level, what have we lost now? We've lost any kind of composed text. I think that once students are at the intermediate level, they need to stop looking at composed texts. It's time to get the real world. But we're going to do two very different kinds of reading at this stage. That kind of is a continuance of the composed text and authentic from the very early levels. That is, we're going to do basic text reading. This is the thing, and this is what let's go back to, sort of what they do outside of class. Preparing a basic text is not something that's done in class. Preparing a basic text is something that takes a long time. But that time will differ from student to student, so that's another reason why it's best done outside of class. I want them to prepare the text extensively. I want them to read it several times. I want them to go back and look up words they know. This is the nearly full control. This is the accuracy part of our reading here. Contrast that with the comprehension texts, which will involve these skimming, scanning, guessing skills. We continue with morphological analysis and syntactic analysis. I mean, that's all the way through. Again, it sounds very, very vague now. I'll show you more of what I mean once we turn to the actual examples. And again, background knowledge, semantic clues, clustering. If I see the words Christian and Muslim and Jew in a text, what might I guess about kind of the topics, the possible range of topics they're talking about? We're talking about, the relationship of these three religions historically, or some kind of a thing. So bringing background knowledge, and again, anticipation, expectations. At the advanced level, here's where I think we're going, or some of the directions we're going in. Greater range of genres. I'm just reminded that we had a question come in just before we started on email about sort of the word count for each of these texts, and that's a hard question to answer. I mean, I think it depends on your sense of how long your students will take to process these texts and what you want to be able to do in class. That is, there's certain exercises that I want to be able to do with students in class. Those need to be kept fairly short at all levels, because there's so much work to be done on accuracy at the advanced level, for example, where you're doing still processing at the intermediate level. So I would say that they don't have to be very long, really, to be very productive. But at the same time, if you've got a really good text, you can edit it out. So I'm not trying to avoid the question, but you'll see with some of the text that we've done, some of the text lengths that we've been working with in Arabic, and maybe we can talk more about that later. Okay, so the interactive reading processes, right? Bringing all these skills to bear and really fleshing them out and having them be more interactive, having them be more automatic too. I want the advanced reader to not need so much prodding from me and not need me to set up goals and tasks and strategies. I want the advanced reader to be able to do that for him or herself. I want the advanced reader to take full advantage of things like recognizing genre type, recognizing and being able to elicit the structure of an argument, how sentences and ideas are structured and connected. I want the advanced reader to be a smart dictionary user, not like I was in that fourth-year Arabic class. I was a stupid dictionary user. I looked up every single word I didn't recognize without looking at what role that word was playing in the sentence. So I don't want my advanced students to do that. I want them to be very judicious. And I want them to go to the dictionary already having an idea of what they'll find. If they go to the dictionary and they're clueless, open a dictionary sometime and look. The most basic verb, let's say hadara in Arabic, has a page and a half of meanings. Now, even the brightest student is going to get lost in a page and a half of meanings in there. So smart dictionary use is very important. Personalized extensive reading, starting at the upper intermediate level and working towards the advanced level. It's not too early in a fourth semester Arabic class to have students start doing a little reading on their own, connected with their own interests. This might be reading an article for a paper they're writing in another course. This might be, sort of following the news on the web, on BBC, on the Al Jazeera site, whatever. There are lots of newspapers at sahafa.com is full of them for Arabic, and I'm sure you all have the sites where the newspapers are, according to their interest. This is part of what keeps reading interesting and really is the application of everything that we're doing in class. Okay, let's turn now to some of the texts, and let's start with texts 1A and 1B. And for those of you who don't read Arabic script, I apologize. This is the one text I don't have an English for. But what I want you to look at, I did this with my students a couple months ago and seemed to make a point with them. What I want you to look at in this text is this is a what to do and what not to do. And I showed it to the students to try and convince them, to try and zoom in. Zooming in. There we go. This is the same text. You can see, okay, here's the line here. So this is the same text. And I've done two completely different things with it. On the top, I've done what I see students do and have fits the first time they do it and try and scare them into never doing it in my class again. That is, they write the English word on top of the Arabic word. Look what this turns into. I mean, how can you see anything on this page? Talk about trees, right? This page is full of trees. It has so many trees, I can't even tell what language is anymore. And the same thing happens, right? And we're so focused on what the word means, we're not even thinking about what the subject of the verb is, right? We're not thinking about the relationship of any individual word to any other word in this text. Now look at the bottom half, where what we've done is parse the sentences. I've circled the main verbs, put arrows, things that refer to. I've underlined once the subject and twice if there's a direct object. I've bracketed prepositional phrases. I've put a little loop under sort of lists of things. There's none in this text. I'll show you in a minute. I've put a line where new sentences begin. In Arabic at least, and I suspect in other languages as well, you can't always depend on punctuation. English-style punctuation is not originally Arabic, and well, I'll show you this in a minute. In any case, after looking, I put this up in front of the class, and I said, okay, take a look at this, and I want you to tell me honestly which one is easier to read. They were forced to admit that the bottom one was much easier to read than the top one. And I said, this is what we're doing, right? This is why I don't let you write English on top of the Arabic. We want to focus on relationships here, not on single things. Okay, here's another chunk of that text. And what I want to show you, even those of you who don't know Arabic script, I need a pen, here it is. Even those of you who don't know Arabic script can look at this page and see that there's no punctuation until about halfway down. It's off, almost off your page. All right, here's the first punctuation, right? Okay, is that a 10-line or however 8-line long sentence? Well, no, it's a lot of different sentences. One of the first things that I think it's helpful to teach students to do is always keep track of where new sentences are beginning. That's the first thing you should do. So sort of skimming down. And so here's part of why we have them bracket things. Right, here's a noun phrase. Here's a noun phrase. Here's a prepositional phrase. Here's a list. All right, here's a prepositional phrase. All right, here's a new sentence. Right, so already that becomes easier to read because I've gotten this big chunk of text broken down into digestible parts. So the new sentence begins here. All right, here's the verb, here's a prepositional phrase, here's a prepositional phrase, and so on and so forth. Right, and it becomes, okay, so here's a new sentence. Right? So breaking that down into sentences first and always thinking about what's going on in the sentence, what kind of a sentence is it, and so forth, is really one of the crucial things in processing and making text manageable, right? Making the scary page full of what to our students is a challenging language, helpful to them and accessible to them. It's not so scary. Okay, the next I'm going to turn to text 2, and text number 2 is only in English. I'll put this up in a second. Here we go. Text number 2 is only in English because this is an English text. I will zoom out a little bit so it's clear, and we'll just do a little bit at a time here. I got this out of Encyclopedia Britannica. Butros Ghali. What do you notice about this text? Anything? It has some nonsense words in it. Why does it have nonsense words in it? I did this in part to take you through sort of some processing and how we kind of help our students learn to process things, but also to kind of show you how, as a teacher, when I'm selecting a text or preparing a text to teach, how I have to look at it. That is, I have to read a text from the vantage point of the students. I have to look at what they know and what they don't know. And so the nonsense words, and I have to know exactly what they know and what they don't know. Right? This is not, I can't just be vague about it. All the words that are nonsense words are to me words that I know that my students at, in Arabic 2 and 3rd semester Arabic, beginning of 3rd semester Arabic, let's say, would not know. So if I look at that, then I start to think about, in preparation, what can I expect from them? What would be my goals from having them read this text? How much can I expect them to understand? Where can I expect them to push, to have a little bit of discovery excitement in dealing with this text? And so on and so forth. So, of course, now when we come to teach it, then first thing we would want to do, I think, and we all know, so pre-reading, right? Set the stage, and so on and so forth. Have the students talk a little bit about, let's look at the title of the text, Butros Ghali. So what do you all know about Butros Ghali? What does anybody know about him? We know he was head of the UN. We know he was Egyptian. We probably know he was a Copt, sort of thing. So sort of what might we expect in an encyclopedia article about Butros Ghali? That's going to help us understand more about these, what the text says, and guess some of these nonsense words. Another helpful thing to do, and I'm going to move this text around a little bit. You all who have it printed out or on screen can kind of look at it up and down. An obvious thing to do is sort of have them go read the first line in every paragraph to say, okay, what's each paragraph about, right? The topic sentence. A good text will have good organization. So what's the first paragraph about? Right, it's the most, right, general info. Who is he, right? Why is there an encyclopedia article about him? Second paragraph, what are we talking about here? Anybody? If we look at that. Good, his background, his professional life, right, what he's done in his life. We see university, we see professorship, we see different places, and so on and so forth. We see something about books, and so on and so forth. In the third paragraph, what do we have? His professional life, and particularly what? If we were talking about, here I can, this is a back and forth with us and the students, right? His professional life, well, we talked about his professorship in universities and writing books. Here we seem to be talking about his political life, his public life, what he was doing. And in particular, where? Is there a location, is there a particular location in this? Egypt. I see Egypt here. And there's mention of Israel as well. Good, excellent, very good. Okay, let's move on to the last paragraph. What does this paragraph seem to be about? We see UN, Secretary General, we see UN, we see, what am I doing? I'm skimming the text, right? Skimming the text looking for important clues. I'm looking for words, I'm zeroing in on words, especially names. I mean, crucial, right? And part of choosing a good text is choosing a text that have these kinds of clues in it, right? That have proper names, that have references that the students will know, and that can help them. So I see lots of UN. So maybe we can sort of say this paragraph really talks about what Boutros-Ghali did at the UN. Okay, let's go back now. And I'll just kind of sort of do some random things here. Okay, in the very first paragraph, I want to draw your attention to this. Right? And this happens to be an English language article, which just goes to prove that this is not not only Arabic does this, although comparative rhetoricians talk about this a lot, the parallel structure in Arabic. The fact that there often seem to be things in pairs and synonyms, right? Scholar and blah, translating and transmitting. Lots of those of you who are Arabic instructors and know Arabic know that this happens a lot. So something like this is one thing that my colleague calls buy one, get one free, right? It's a list of two nouns, they're synonyms. Understand one and you've got the general idea, move on. Is this an important word? Not really, right? Even so, might we take a guess at what it is? After having skimmed and read about him in university and him in public life and him in the UN, politician, I think, would be a great word. Does it matter if they guess politician and not statesman, which happened to be the original? Not in my book, right? I mean, politician, statesman, beautiful. Any guess that's in the ballpark is right on, and there's no way I'm going to stop and sort of say, no, the actual text says statesman, not politician. If you guessed politician, you are reading fluently, right? You are reading fluently, and you are to be high-fived and congratulated and everything else. He was the first Arab and first African to blah, 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 UN, blah, 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 blah. Okay, just from what you know, what do we think this sentence says? I mean, first Arab and first African UN. What do we know about him in the UN? He worked in the UN. Now, at some level, depending on my knowledge of my students and my expectations and what we're working on grammatically, I might want to zero in on the fact that this seems to be a verb, right? Maybe we want to guess that verb. Maybe we want to guess a phrase. What do we usually say when we talk about the UN, right? That to become something excellent, right? Something along those lines. These are all kinds of choices that I make and decisions that I make when I'm preparing a text in part, but also in part on my feet in the actual classroom because I'm prompted by the student's own interaction with the text. I might have them work on this text in groups, and some of them might sort of say, and I might get a hand raised over here, does this word mean, and I will always answer questions, does this word mean? I will never answer questions, what does this word mean? But does this word, is this become? High five, you got it, that's great. And that kind of positive energy is part of what makes reading exciting and this very rewarding kind of discovery. Okay, let's see. We can do the same thing kind of all the way on down. I don't want to take too long on any one text. You kind of get the idea. Here is a word they know in a grammatical form they may not know. Again, what I do with that will depend on what I'm expecting my students. What kind of a word is this? What kind of this word up here? How do we know it's an adjective? Because it's before the noun. So all of our languages do different things with adjectives, but again, okay, it's an adjective. Is it crucial? Adjectives are not usually crucial, right? It was a dark and stormy night, right? That's the sort of the thing to remember. It was a dark and stormy night. Yes, nights are dark. Thank you very much. And we move on. Okay, so we have lots of, okay, he also wrote several something, again. Guessing work / grammatical work. In French. What do you think? Could be what? Could be published. Excellent. I think the original was published. I don't remember exactly. But yeah, something like published, right? What helped? One of the things that helped you was the grammatical form of this word, right? This participle form, this ed, right? And so using those kinds of clues and teaching and reminding students, because these are things they've studied, right? I'm not using this text to teach them about the passive participle. If I'm doing this, they know the passive participle. But this is applied passive participle, right? This is passive participle in the real world, in your life, right? How it works. And these are kinds of things that we need to do over and over and over again at the intermediate level in particular, so that, you know, they kind of, until they become automatic. The million-dollar question is, at what point do they become automatic? I'll let you know when I've begun to figure out the answer to that question. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, you look at paragraph 3 now, the Egypt paragraph, and tell me in 30 seconds what words you can guess from context. Focus in, right? Zero in on a context that will give you a clear crack at a word. I'm thinking that you'll probably focus on Sadet, because Sadet, when we talk about something and we talk about Sadet to Jerusalem, we're generally talking about what? Talking about Sadet's trip, visit. Does it matter? Trip, visit, both great, right? Visit to Jerusalem. Okay, so we have a new word here that we've guessed, right? And we've got the meaning of the context. Et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So guessing, reading in phrases again, right? Just to kind of go back to this sort of reading in phrases, and let me remember here to sort of say something about how you avoid processing linearly and how you avoid kind of reading aloud. That a student's natural instincts will be often in a text like that to start and to even read aloud under their breath or so on and so forth. And a clue that I found in one of the very good books on teaching reading in the ESL field has the very excellent suggestion of having the students try and look at more than one word at once. That is, have them try and look at 2 or 3 words at the same time. And these lists and pairs are actually excellent ways to kind of start thinking them and start training them to do that. So if you look at this all at the same time, you're not trying to read it out loud, you're not trying to sound the word out, and you're processing text in chunks. Okay, now let's move on to text 3A and 3B. Okay, these have 3A, and the rest of the text that we're going to do, these texts have an Arabic and an English version. Just for 2 seconds, here's what the Arabic text looks like, the original. There it is, an advertisement, obviously. And here's what I have done with the English language version. Now, this is a very elementary text. This is a text that we can use as soon as the students have learned the alphabet, pretty much. It's a list. It's a very clear context, an advertisement. I would probably tell them it's an advertisement, or maybe ask if they knew, or let them know. And I don't want to give them any word. That is, the only words that they're going to get out of this text are words that they can guess. One thing that I do want to do and want them to pick up on is how can I best focus, and where can I most appropriately focus on a text like this? Are there any clues that help me skip what is skippable? Let me start there. And let me start with that. There are definitely clues in Arabic about things that are skippable, because at this point they don't really have any vocabulary per se, right? They have a few words, that's all. I'm not expecting them to recognize vocabulary. I'm expecting them to recognize cognate or sort of Arabicized words, basically, words that they would recognize from English. And I don't want to say any because the text is full of them, and I want to do that in a minute. And they've all been learning the alphabet, and they've been learning the sound system. So one of the things that I want to sort of get them to think about is, what words can I automatically ignore in this text, as I know they're not going to be relevant for what I need? And those are the words with with sounds that are only in Arabic. And those of you who don't know Arabic will recognize them because they'll look funny, right? They're capital D's in the middle, or they're, these backward or forward, the superscript C, or the apostrophe, the capital S. These are transliterations of Arabic sounds. So any Arabic word that I see that has these Arabic sounds in it can't possibly concern me at this level. And once you tell the students, oh yeah, if it's an Arabic word, I don't know it. That's not what I'm after here. I'm after words that are cognate, words that are going to have only sounds that we have in English in them. So, so we have skim. Okay, so we have a title, and we have this and that, and we have down at the bottom, of course, numbers. And numbers are always a great thing in text because it's obvious what they are, right? They're a phone number, they're an address, they're a population number, they're a year, they're a date, they're some sort of recognizable thing. So text with numbers are very good, a good thing. What I want to focus your attention on is this, and I want to focus especially the attention of people who don't know any Arabic, preferably no Middle Eastern languages whatsoever, and I have several right here in the room with me. And I'm going to ask them to sound these words out and call them out when they figured something out. This is what the student sees, right? This is exactly transliterating, so there are no short vowels, they're just the consonants. So take it away. We're gonna ignore all of that, actually. That's what we're gonna ignore because we have lots of Arabic stuff here. So we're gonna kind of ignore all of this line up here and probably this down here, right? I may go back to that. But let's focus your attention on the white. All right, and we're gonna cross out things. Okay, I'm gonna cross out this because that's got obviously non-English things in there. I'm going to cross out this. This is all one thing. And look, it's got an apostrophe in the middle there. It's got that ch sound. I know we don't have that in English. I know we don't have that in English. Okay, so I've crossed those out. Computer. All right. Excellent. Okay, so now once they get the first word, then they're fine. Okay, so what else? Computer, now everybody should chime in. Television. Television, right? Fax. Camera. Video. One more, maybe. Camera. Stereo. Stereo is a little bit difficult. You have the ST. Here's a phonological thing. Arabic doesn't like consonant clusters, right? And teach them something or pick up something about the language. Telefonet, very good. Okay, have you learned something grammatical about the plurals of Arabicized borrowed words now from looking at this text? They end in at. You've learned your first plural pattern in Arabic just from this text, right? So they've guessed, they've read, their eyes gotten used to dealing with Arabic more, they've sounded out words, they've learned to ignore things, they've learned a very important lesson that it's okay to skip. That is, it is desirable to skip when we're doing real world and real life Arabic exercises, reading exercises. Okay, so there's more that we could do, a little bit more that we could do with this text, but let's move on to text 4A and 4B. And this is about New York. Okay, I'll just flash the Arabic up for a second. This is actually in our textbook. No, okay, there's what the text looks like, a bit enlarged. So we are doing this a little past midway through the first semester. They've done the alphabet, they've learned a few words. They also might have an idea kind of what a verb looks like, even though we haven't learned verbs and so on and so forth. Don't have a lot of vocabulary. It's kind of intimidating, right? This is not a 3-line text. But what is helping them in it. Here, let me change to the English now so that we can all follow what's going on. And let me zoom in here for a minute. Okay, and again, I've done the nonsense word thing, right? For the same reason, basically. Same reasons, plural. Again, how I'm preparing the text, what I'm going to do with it, what I'm going to expect from the students with it. We mentioned numbers a little while ago, right? What numbers are great things, right? So we have several numbers here. What do you think the numbers are? Do we think we can expect the students to guess what the numbers are? Excuse me. Anybody?
Population.
Population and size, like kilometers squared, right? Probably. And it's an exact transliteration of the Arabic. Good. So, and then, okay, so might we have the same word, and there should be the same word. Oops, excuse me, I changed this on one version. These words should be the same nonsense word. I was trying to do that. And then at that point, we would have the word for what? We would be guessing the word for population. Guessing the word, they may never see, they may see it again 2 years later, right? They may not remember it, but the important thing is they were not intimidated by the fact that they didn't recognize the word. They didn't feel the need to run to the dictionary and look it up. It was fine, we processed the text, we understood, and we moved on. Here, okay, just beginning our grammatical work, but one of the things that we wanted to have them do, obviously, is skim through. Now, I've made this a little bit easier by capitalizing the proper nouns here. In Arabic, they wouldn't even be capitalized, so it would be a little bit more difficult. But, we would do the pre-reading exercise. Okay, it's an encyclopedia article about New York, what kinds of information, and so on and so forth. What are some of the names? And again, we get proper names, proper nouns or names. Thinking grammatically, right? Again, even at this very, very elementary level, right? What can I have them do with this, right? And this, we're looking at Hudson and guessing that we're talking about New York. This is the Hudson, right? So what is the Hudson? It's a river, and we know, and they know basic, they've sort of seen constructions like this before. They haven't really studied it. But again, they don't really need to study something formally to kind of think about things. They've seen patterns like the city of Atlanta, the city of New York, the city of Cairo. So it's not a big jump to go from that to the river of Hudson. And so now we have the word for river, okay? What else can I guess? Another really clear context, right? Again, a repeated word, right? And a context that's so crystal clear that I just, as a teacher, can't let it go. That is Jawarkab, Long Island, and Jawarkab, Staten. And we have Jawarkab meaning island, right? There's our word for island there. Again, I may want to say, okay, where there's a verb here and there's a verb, probably not at this level. Now, sometimes, and the students are kind of working in pairs going through this, I have students who will say, what are these letters? I see this J and Q and sh and Q and all these. What are they? I'm not going to, those are, that's, I'm not about answer. I'll answer questions, is that, or can this mean, but not, so I say, okay, well, how can you figure that out? How can you go about guessing? What might you guess? Okay, what kinds of things, it's an abbreviation, right? What kinds of things might be abbreviated like that? What in a text that's talking about the location and size and population of New York, what kinds of information might we want to see? How many of them are there? We have J, and we have Q, and we have Sheen, and we have R. There are 4 of them, we say. What are they? They are the directions. They are the abbreviations for the directions, right? So there we go, north, south, east, and west, and so on and so forth. Now, I have not even bothered to finish transliterating the Arabic. There's still another 3 or 4 lines in this text that I have not transliterated at all from the Arabic. And I just kind of crossed them out right here on my copy. You probably can't even see the crossing out. All of this. And I didn't bother to transliterate because we're not going to deal with it. I'm going to skip it in class. And again, this is part of the it's okay to skip. We're not going to do everything. Everything is not equal in importance. Well, I'm going to help you focus in on the important thing. One more thing that we can already do at this level, another kind of guessing / grammar thing. Let's look at something like this. Someone might focus their attention on this phrase now. They've been dealing with nouns and adjectives. Let me pull that down a little bit and let me zoom in. Okay, the Skemibi, plural, the United, the American. Probably a lot of you can guess that this has got to be a noun, right? And these are adjectives, and this is the grammatical structure, the noun adjective structure in Arabic, right? Okay, so what, so we're reinforcing that sort of, so noun, adjective, adjective. What do you think that phrase might mean? The something, the United, the American.
The United States of America.
The United States of America. There we go. We have one more thing there. Very good. Okay, so there's text number 4. And now we come to text number 5, which I'll be putting up in just one second. Again, there's an Arabic of it, for those of you who read Arabic. And for those of you who read Arabic, I have also, I'll leave that up for a second. Those of you who read Arabic, you'll also notice that there are nonsense words in the Arabic this time. That is, I changed out the Arabic roots for nonsense roots. And I did this one time when we were running a workshop and put it up on the board and sort of said to the junior instructors who were sitting there, I said, so what do you think about this text? What level do you think? This text is so hard. There's all these words I don't know. I said, guess what students do when you give them authentic texts? This is what a text, sort of, you have to think about what a text looks like to a student, right? This is what a text looks like to an intermediate student. This is an intermediate level text. And I think this is all of the text, right? So this is so intermediate level, 2 paragraphs long, right? This is a perfectly good in-class exercise. Let me put the English up now. Now, since we're moving up to the intermediate level here, things are going to be a little more complicated, and I've made it really, really difficult by not only putting in nonsense words, but by almost translating it. Let me try and get it focused more. Can you see that? Is it clear? Not really. Let me hold on for 1 second here. Let's see if a dark background helps any. All right, let's focus in on it anymore. We'll just take part of it at a time. Okay, thank you. Bear with me here. There we go. I've made this really difficult by not only having the nonsense words, but kind of doing a very literal grammatical translation. And in order to talk more specifically about the kinds of strategies and skills and interactive reading that I think we want to be doing at this level. Okay, so pre-reading, right? We always start with the pre-reading. Feasts the Christians. Already you have to do a little bit of work with the title grammatically. What do you mean, feasts the Christians? Feasts of the Christians, right? And we already have to do that work, right? Of course, for an intermediate level student, that should be pretty automatic by now. So, okay, let's take a second. What do you mean, Feast of the Christians? What are we talking about? Are we talking about, worldwide Christianity? Are we talking about, talking about Christmas? Are we talking about Easter? Are we talking about, what are we talking about? Is it an informational text? Is it giving us information on the feasts of the Christians? We want to take a minute and kind of whet our anticipation or expectation buds there. First reading through, we're going to skim, right? We're going to, again, like we did before, look for words and look for concepts, right? Skip the stuff, and I've made it easy for you guys than for the students who have to kind of know what they can skip and not be struggling, and they're always struggling with questions. Should I know this word? So you have to kind of, okay, even if you should, malish, it's okay, don't worry about it. Even if you should know the word, just you don't recognize it right off the bat, skip, move on. This is a skimming reading. So what do we have? Just call out with me, everybody. We have feasts. brothers, Muslims, occasions. We have exchange visits, houses, tree. Tree, of course, is going to trigger Christmas, obviously, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Houses, and so on and so forth. Good. Okay. So what do we got so far? We've got, okay, probably some reference to Christmas in here for the tree. Brothers. Let's go back to brothers. And let's focus in on that for a minute, especially since it's like sort of the setup sentence here, the first sentence in this text. What can we figure out? What about the brothers here? Our brothers. What does that tell us about? That tells us something important about the text. Our brothers, the Christians. Who wrote this text?
A non-Christian.
A non-Christian wrote this text. All right, so already we got perspective in here. We're bringing in perspective. So this is a text written by probably a Muslim, right, about, right, our Christian brothers. And we already have perspective, and we already have attitude in here, right, our Christian brothers, right? So one of the underlying themes that we're getting, and we're not even going to get it from the words in the text, right? This is going to be about tone. We are getting what? Coexistence, tolerance. We're getting, sort of the idea that Muslims and Christians share, that they coexist peacefully. We still something the feasts of our brothers, the Christians, right? We have to go back and guess. But that's not the first reading. We want to go back and guess that later. Okay, let's take a look at the second paragraph for a minute, sort of in the same light. What kind of information am I getting here? Here, starting here and in the feasts. Again, okay, so we're focusing on words, names, ideas. What planet am I in? Damascus, okay, we're in Damascus. And we have a whole list of them here right now. And, not all of our students will recognize all of these. Of course, the Orthodox and the Catholic, right? So we have this word Syrian, right? And we probably are not going to know that, right? Here's a nice word, Protestant, right? They should be able by now to just recognize from the shape of that word that if they sound it out, it'll be a cognate, right? They'll recognize it. So Syrian, I don't know what Syrian is, let's say. I'm a student, I don't know much about Eastern Christianity, but I know that it's one of these what? What is this a list of? Types or sects. Okay, tell me where the word sect is in this paragraph. Where is it likely to be? At the beginning of the list, right? It's likely to be at the head of the list, right? So it's likely to be right about here. Now, while we're on this sentence, we were chunking before. Let's chunk for a minute now. Here's a new sentence, right? And gives us new sentence in Arabic. Smallest word, one letter, the most important word in the Arabic language, and I would bet in a lot of your languages too. Okay, so here's our sentence. Most of it is a list, but if it's a sentence, then there should be some kind of structure to this sentence. At this level, intermediate level, I want again and again and again and again to focus on sentence structure, and in particular this kind of sentence structure. Well, the subject following the verb is one, but here's the other real trip up. This is something that we study in day one in elementary Arabic. Day one in elementary Arabic, students all learn that the verb to be is not used in the present tense, right? That's easy when we're saying, I'm a student, you're a student, I love you, you love me, It's very, very easy at that level. This is a book, this is a tree, this is a kangaroo. Not so easy when we're dealing with paragraph-long sentences like this. And it's very easy to kind of lose track. Again, we want to go back to the forest, go back to the overall structure. We have to know that, and they've studied this out the wazoo. All right, I'm going to chunk off this prepositional phrase to get that out of the way. But the sentence has got to begin there. So I have this predicate here. And what do I need? I need the subject. What do I not have? I do not have the verb to be. It's missing. BYOV, we call it, bring your own verb, right? You bring your own verb to the sentence. And the question is, where is the verb to be in this sentence? There are so many sentences in Arabic that are structured like this. And I'll bet in other Middle Eastern languages as well, if not this exactly, you have similar kinds of complicated, complex grammatical and syntactic constructions that you really need to kind of focus attention on again, 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 and again, and again. From this or these, now I have to make sort of, right, choices. This is a plural here, so I'm going to choose these. From these, what do you think? It's hard. I'll help. Here, we've got a sentence break here, right? How do we know we've got a sentence break here? Because I've got a noun phrase here and a noun phrase here. And I can't just have random noun phrases. And they're not in a list. How do I know they're not in a list? Because there's no and, right? Arabic lists always have and. So I've got a noun phrase here, a noun phrase here. I need to figure out what the relationship is. In absence of a verb, the only relationship has to be that equal sign. So what do we have? We have from these sects, what? There are many of blah, blah, blah. Now the whole thing becomes clear, right? The whole thing, kind of the whole paragraph kind of falls into place. So there are many of the room Orthodox, and then there are a little bit less than them Catholic room, and then and so on, and all these different sects. Okay? Okay, let's do the same drill here. Here's another new sentence up in the first paragraph. Is that on your screen there? Okay. So back up in the first paragraph, 3 lines from the bottom, among, and among. Right? Okay, so see if everybody in this room and everybody out there, see if you can find the sentence break here. Noun phrase, what do you think? Let's have a stab. If you can figure out the structure of this sentence, I'll sign you up for Arabic right now. Here, right? That's it. Pronoun, end of noun phrase. Pronoun in Arabic, end of noun phrase, right? The tree, the birth, da-da-da-da, is the new sentence. Okay. Maybe we want to give this a capital B and call this the what? The birth of Christ, right? The Christmas tree, right? So here we have our sentence break. Here we have our R. So among them are, what? The Christmas tree, which, okay, and a relative clause. And relative clauses are fun in all languages, even English, which often doesn't even mark them at all. Here we've got a lot of, okay, she, them, this, that, and the other. She and them, I have a lot of she and them slashes here because in Arabic it's the same program. It's the same pronoun, And you need to make a decision whether this is a feminine singular noun or a non-human plural noun. And as in this sentence, many times you'll have the same pronoun referring to more than one entity, and so you've got to do a lot of arrowing and diagramming complex sentences. So, okay, so the which sentence, right, this relative clause, one of the things that we need to kind of, again, come back to word order, right? There's no way, I think, at this level that you can focus too much on word order and the special characteristics of word order in our languages, in whatever language you teach. A relative clause. Teach students things like relative clause is X word order, an indefinite relative clause is this word, right? After this, you always find this, or you usually find this word order. And a relative clause, and one of the things that the students know to recite as litany in my class is relative clause is verb, subject, word order, right? So we have the verb here. Who's putting? Who's putting? Who is she? Arabic word order, right? And that's what everybody says, one or someone. We've been studying verb, subject, word order for a year now. But just today in class, what's the subject of this verb? It. No, the subject is right here. Subject is right there. The house is put. You have to look for that verb, that subject, after the verb. So Muslim houses put, or many Muslim houses, excuse me. Let me get that whole thing here. So many Muslim houses put what?
The tree.
The tree, right? That's our regulative clause in the feast of the birth. Good. Okay, here's another kind of a thing. Okay, this is really specific to Arabic, so I apologize. But, well, no, it's in Hebrew too, I think. The binyanim, right? We're coming to the sort of the verb patterns, right, and what they mean. Here's something, we're just beginning to study this now. She remains her. Let's cross out them. Again, the she, them, whatever. Okay, parallelism, right? So the Muslim houses put the tree, and we're going to assume, since this and is here, same subject. So Muslim houses, Muslim families remain her. But now this is how the students are reading it, because this is the verb they know, and this is the root that they know. But they also kind of have a sense that they don't know exactly what they are, but there are these different patterns that sort of add a little something to a meaning. So if I've got a direct object here, then what do I have? They make it, they keep them, they cause them to remain. So here, right, is an opportunity for me to kind of be working on that long-term goal of mine in building up their sense of the verb patterns in a reading context. I think that I will sort of stop here. That's enough to give you a shame. I'm going to take questions now.
There's a question from, about clarifying the English business. I mean, this is someone who's confused. This is how what you present to the students in English with the nonsense words, or can you explain to them what, why did you do it?
Presented to English with presented the English to the students, like the Butros Ghali text, right? Something like that.
See this, or just
Students can see this, and I, have. I don't do it. I used to do this with students. Now I think the approach that we use sort of from day one obviates the need for it. But it's helpful to do with students who are really, really so attached to understanding every single word that they can't get beyond skipping things. And they can't get beyond this need to know every word, or I can't deal, and I can't possibly look at the fourth word until I've understood exactly what the third word is. This kind of exercise is useful in that situation, when students really need help seeing that really, to a certain extent, this is certainly the way you grew up reading your native language. This is a natural reading skill, and it's important, and it's efficient, right? It's efficient to be able to read this way. So no, this is not a regular exercise. This is a kind of a solving problems with the student fears and nerves kind of an exercise. Usually we're just working with the Arabic. Okay, we're open for questions now, comments, topics you'd like to return to, and so on and so forth. Yes?
You know that sometimes there are texts that we create or that appear in books. That sometimes you have, I don't know, to call it difficult words that we have on the side. What do you think about that? Or should we use it, and to what extent?
Excellent question. I'll repeat it in case you're off mic. Okay, the question is that a lot of times you'll see, whether in textbooks or some people sort of make up reading activities, and they'll have a little text, and there will be a number of words in that text that students do not know that are glossed, right? Sort of every other word at some points. In my opinion, this reinforces the linear processing notion. This reinforces everything that I don't want the students to get stuck doing. It reinforces the idea that they have to understand every word to understand anything. And in our languages, let's face it, this is not German, this is not French and, Spanish, where I can open up a Spanish newspaper and understand, 25 to 30% of the words on the page. We are dealing with languages in which it will be years, and I'll let you know when I reach that point in Arabic. After 25 years, I'm still not there, when I can regularly pick up something and know every single word in the text. Still I don't know every single word in the text. Still I learn from guessing. So we've got to get the students used to the idea that they don't need to understand anything. It's counterproductive to understand anything. And lists of glossed words just reinforce that notion. And if they can't understand anything in the text without that list of words, then I suggest that the text is inappropriate for those students at that level. And you need to find a text that has something that they can get out of it. Now, at the most, you might want to sort of give them beforehand and play with them and sort of activate them, one or two key words that they can't understand the text without. Even so, personally, I would prefer just editing the text if it's just a matter of replacing, a fancy word capital for the word big city or something like that. I mean, I would almost prefer to do that and still call it, okay, it's modified authentic, but it's pretty authentic, at a lower intermediate level, much better than giving lists and lists of glosses. So thank you for that question. That's a really important topic. Yes.
Okay,
Another
question
question.
about from Martha Shulkinova asking that when she explains, when I work on developing reading strategy with my students, I find it is a time that I'm using a lot of English in class. This bothers me somehow. I try to maintain Arabic as much as possible, but I find that it is one time when I revert to using a lot of English. Do you have the same experience? If not, how do you avoid using English when working on teaching reading strategies?
Excellent question. How do we avoid English when teaching reading strategies? I think it's not possible to avoid English altogether, and I definitely find myself having that problem at some times. Try to keep it to a minimum by at least always using Arabic grammatical terminology. I think grammatical terminology is something that definitely should be taught in language from the very beginning, so that we're talking about language in the language as much as we can all the time. And at that point, what I really end up doing a lot is having sentences that are sort of one word this, one word that, or sort of based in Arabic but have a lot of English words thrown in. And really, in the interests of time and in the interests of the complexity with which we're working sometimes, the occasional English, I think, and when they work together, quite frankly, it's very difficult to keep students all in Arabic when they're working together on a text as well. And I think that we just have to recognize that fact and not beat ourselves, do what we can, but not beat ourselves over the head with it. Developing the reading skills is really an important part of what we need to do, and if a little bit of English creeps in here and there, معلش, so be it. Again, focus on what you can do, and we just do the best we can. But it's a good question. Yes, another question.
How often do you give reading assignments to be done at home, or how often do you actually do reading exercises in class at all levels based on 4 hours per week schedule?
Based on a 4-hour per week, repeat the question. The question is, how often do I give reading exercises at home, and how often do we do reading exercises in class based on a 4-hour per week schedule? Try to have at least one reading exercise a week, and usually it's sort of either in class or outside of class at the intermediate level. I'm trying to think. At the elementary level, I would say we try about once a week to have a reading in class, and there's not a lot of reading comprehension that takes place outside of class at the elementary level in our program. A little bit, but you want to really kind of have the reassurance of support system there in terms of you and classmates and so on and so forth. You want to make sure that they don't freak out. You also want to make sure that they're not going home and asking their Lebanese roommate to translate every single word in the text, which we've had happen, or calling up their mother on the phone and saying, "Mama, what does this word mean? What does this word mean?" And then, the whole point has just gone out the window. So mostly in class, especially at the elementary level, and outside of class at the elementary level, I would say when we can get sort of once every 10 days or so, maybe a composed text outside of class. Now, that's what we do now. Not that I'm thinking that's ideal. Those are kind of the materials that we have at this point. And I think we're in a constant search for the right balance between the kinds of mechanical drilling that we all feel the need to do a lot of at the elementary level. That is, we're spending a lot of time outside of class doing things like, conjugating verbs and filling in vocabulary and working on grammatical stuff, and not as much time in doing the kinds of, reading, listening, and so on and so forth. What the ideal balance is of those two things, I think we'll be in a constant search for. So at the intermediate level, I think alternating back and forth week by week, prepared the basic text at home, that's that home thing one week, and then maybe next week kind of a reading exercise in class. And then at some point, and I think some point at mid-intermediate, upper intermediate, you really want to start trying to give reading comprehension exercises at home once every couple of weeks, I think. I've been trying to do that, and it seems to be going okay. And then advanced, of course, they're doing most everything outside of class. I mean, the advanced level, I don't think we should need to really be doing, ideally, if they've had this all along, we shouldn't really need to be doing sort of comprehension in class. They should be doing the comprehension outside of class, and we can be using our very valuable class time, which is usually only 3 hours or so a week at the advanced level, in discussing and kind of being a bit more productive in class.
Can you say something about using the pattern? I mean, some of the languages using the pattern and root system. I mean, when do you start working on that?
Question, when do we start working on using the root and pattern system, particularly Hebrew and Arabic, although, Persian, of course, and Turkish as well, there's a little bit of that through the Arabic vocabulary, or Arabic originally vocabulary. It's never too early to start working on the root and pattern system, and I think from day one, it's very crucial that they begin to learn to recognize these consonants that form meaning in our language. And it's crucial in reading and building reading fluency that students really learn to kind of pick out those and use those to guess. And you saw that in a couple of texts. Let's see, one in particular. I have Butros here. What I was trying to approximate here was that they know this basic root, and they're seeing it in a grammatical form that they don't recognize, or they don't know, or they haven't learned yet, right? And so, but I'm banking on the fact that they can pick out that root and understand something about that word. So that's kind of what I was trying to approximate here. From very early on, I think it's important to use roots. At the intermediate level, I think it's, this is getting outside our topic a little bit, but you can really even focus on it more and start to kind of build in more. I mean, at the elementary level, roots. At the intermediate level, I think the patterns and morphological patterns are really crucial to work on at the intermediate level. A lot. Yes?
What about accuracy exercises? Mainly for the elementary level. Do you expect the students to do more of this at home, to work on the accuracy at home?
Yes.
And if you work on this also in class, how do you do it?
Excellent question. Accuracy, working on accuracy. The question was primarily focused on accuracy, working on accuracy at the elementary level. So let me begin there. Working on accuracy in reading at the elementary level, I think, does primarily take place outside the classroom, and so the question is then, how do you check it, and how do you help students sort of make sure they're reading accurately and help them to be more accurate readers and so forth. One sort of unfortunately rather time-consuming way would be to have them all record things that they're reading out loud, and that's accuracy in terms of pronunciation, in terms of kind of seeing how they're reading. In assuming that in a text whose vocabulary they control, that they're producing something that if they understand it, or something that I don't personally do a lot of at the elementary level, but it's possible to have them translate things. But I think the crucial thing is that they do it at home, and that they submit these things, and that you check them outside of class, simply because using class time to, again, listen to people read out loud while the rest of the class goes to sleep, while one person reads, or sitting there, many of us went through, read, translate, read, translate, read, translate, and so nobody's actually speaking the entire class. One person is reading and translating into another language. Translating is something that's best done outside of class, and it's very efficient, and I like to do a lot of it beginning at the intermediate level to check accuracy. Take a chunk of whatever basic text they're working on, have them translate it. That checks accuracy. It doesn't waste class time. You can have this individual kind of rapport with the student and be working at an individual level with them on their skills, on their accuracy skills. Accuracy at the advanced level is something that I think needs a lot of attention. And again, you can continue with spot translation. Don't need to translate the entire text. If you judiciously choose 1 or 2 paragraphs of a text and have them translate those, then you can get a good idea of how accurate the translation is. So it doesn't need to be long. right? Just needs to be, kind of choose wisely, quality versus quantity. Another question.
Another question, can you recommend authentic Arabic texts for students at the 1+ level, that's the intermediate level, or do such texts not exist?
Can I recommend authentic texts for the intermediate level in Arabic or any language? Finding good authentic texts takes a long time. The only thing more time-consuming than finding authentic reading texts is, you guessed it, finding authentic listening texts. It's a huge task, and to put together the very few reading exercises that we've put in our textbooks has taken 20 years of assembling text. It's been, 3 of us over the period of 20 years have put together the bank of text that we choose from. So good text is very hard to come by, and that's why we don't want to relinquish it very easily, and we keep recycling it and reusing it. It's difficult. But I think that my colleagues and I would agree that editing text and taking a chunk of a text, or cutting down long text that you can sort of find book length or long article length, and judiciously choose several paragraphs that concentrate on 1 or 2 points or so, and you can have what is an authentic text, and what you've done is edited it for length, and that makes it a little bit easier. It's very difficult, very, very difficult, and that's one of the drawbacks, one of the problems in teaching this kind of reading. But
In your experience, what degree of disadvantage does these reading strategies represent for Arabic, Hebrew, and Persian versus Turkish, for example, that uses the script? So the issue of the foreign script.
the issue of the foreign script, I wish I sort of knew anything at all, really much about Turkish, to kind of be able to judge that. But my guess is, from what I have read and heard about Turkish, is that sort of grammatically it's sort of in such a different language family that there are a lot of grammatical things going on in Turkish that really need a lot of attention and a lot of parsing. And so I would say that the script per se is not a big deal. I mean, in any case, and I would also say that any kind of difficulty in acquiring the scripts at the beginning is almost kind of offset by the role of the root and pattern system, which is part of the logic of the language, which helps you in terms of learning vocabulary, which helps you figure out things that are going on. So I don't think it's such an advantage to be using a Latin script for Turkish, especially when I think that the students need to learn a lot of reading strategies in order to deal with the grammatical complexity of it. Again, I'm speaking from ignorance and I'm guessing, but my suggestion would be that Turkish teachers really think a lot about what kinds of grammatical things trip students up. And it's taken me a long time to figure. I'm still figuring this out. For Arabic, I'm still refining my, okay, when do I need to start hitting the subject-verb word order in Arabic? And it gets earlier every year. Even though I went through the process and kind of I learned to read fluently basically by kind of teaching myself these strategies. And so from that experience, on top of many years in the classroom, and this is where I am now. I'm still in the process of thinking about it, but start thinking about that and keep thinking about that. What are the things that trip your students up when Turkish? You all have a sense of them. Sort of start designing exercises that anticipate them and that troubleshoot them even before they occur, and then keep working on them, would be my suggestion. Okay.
So can we just remind people to tune in that the next workshop will be Friday, the 25th of February?
We are going to end with an advertisement. Bear with me here as I take live feed. Please do tune in for our next workshop, which will be on teaching vocabulary. No.
This is the working in groups.
Working in groups. Our next workshop will be working in groups on Friday, the 25th of February.
Keep checking the NMELRC website.
Do keep checking the NMELRC website for updates on this and future workshops. Thank you very much for joining us, and look forward to seeing you soon. And thank you to all of our technical and non-technical assistants.